Hello YouTube, this is Runa. This is my starter base in my 120 survival world. Obviously the base has everything a serious Minecrafter needs. A couch, a TV, table for 6, and of course a fully functioning multi-item sorter to keep my storage tidy. Let's talk about storages for starter bases. On one hand, even though the starter base is built in the basement, there isn't a lot of redstone behind it, so you see we need about 5 more blocks behind the chests. The actual sorting system is under the storage room, and if you've been in my channel for a while, you know that I like to hide redstone. So I tried to design a system that isn't too big, where I can hide most of the redstone underground, and it is fairly easy to build, but on the other hand is large and flexible enough so that it can last me a month or two. By then, I plan to have started building a mega base with plenty of room for a larger storage system. And the main thing is, if I return from the building project, I can just chuck in all of these shulker boxes full with junk into my storage system, and it will sort most of the items. The system will send the empty shulker boxes here, and yes, shulker boxes stack in this world. The unstackable items will end up here, and then I have set up a multi-item sorter with 8 columns, 2 wide. And then we have an overflow of the items that aren't sorted. And on the other side, storage room for the shulker boxes coming from my farm. So this is from the raid farm, this is from piglin bartering. Now, if you're not familiar with this system, it doesn't need slot reservation. So for each slice, you have a filter chest where you put in a couple of items that you want to sort in the slice. And then you have an arbitrary number of chests. In this case 6, because you can access 6 chests from the ground, but you could have more. And all of the items in the slice will go into these chests. So this system here is set up with 6 double chests per slice. And the system works at almost hopper speed. As long as it's sorting one item type, it's at hopper speed. If it changes item types, it needs a couple of seconds of a break. But for all intents and purposes, this is pretty much hopper speed. So considering that I have shulker box loaders for all of my farms, so the farm output will never ever land here, hopper speed is usually quite enough for me. So let's have a look at the system in a creative world. And this is basically the system I built, and it's pretty hard to see what's going on here, so I made kind of an explosion drawing. From the input chests, the items go into a preprocessor, and my Zoomer presented a very nice design for that, because it's really tiny and it's silent. So the items will be split into stackable items, into shulker boxes, and unstackable items. So this would be the input here. The shulker boxes are sent actually via a water stream in this case, because I didn't want to fit in another dropper elevator, into a shulker box unloader. The items will be unloaded here, and the items go back into the input chests. This is as not to overload the system, so we don't want anything backing up. And in the shulker boxes we could have unstackable items that should end up here. So instead of another unstackable item filter, we will just reroute the output of the shulker box loader back into our input chest. So this is the design of the shulker box unloader. It's from Summers to Sage. And now all of the stackable items go into the RapsMoony multi-item sorter version 5. And that's just a great multi-item sorter. It's fast, it's fairly easy to build, it's easy to set up, no slot reservation, and it's completely silent. And the output of the multi-item sorters go into dropper elevators that are again designed by my Zoomer. Here you can see one of those dropper elevators. They also work at hopper speed and are silent. This sorter is pretty much 2 wide tileable, except that it's an AB configuration, but the only difference is that one slice uses activator rail, the other slice uses powered rails here, so they're almost the same. The dropper elevator itself is 1 wide tileable, but unfortunately the clock that controls it is not. I'm not sure if this is the best solution, but it is a solution. So I have shifted every second dropper elevator by 1 block and used an extra comparator and 2 extra repeaters, but still this part here is a hopper speed clock if there is any signal here. So this system is still hopper speed, even though it's got 3 ticks more delay until it reacts. And this way these dropper elevators are independent of each other and the redstone signal does not bleed over. You can build as many slices if you want. In this world download I have put 6 slices. In my world I use 8 slices. And here you see that most of the redstone is hidden under the storage room. We could even get rid of the dropper elevators and use water elevators instead, if you are not afraid of items despawning if the system backs up and both the slices and the overflow are full. This would save another couple of blocks space in the back. Now, speaking of overflow, we do have a simple overflow protection. We have an overflow column, which is configured using 4 double chests right now. If one of the slices is full, the items will go into the overflow column. Then they will start up backing up this overflow system here. These hoppers and the droppers that we use to move the items. And after that it will probably get a bit ugly because the items will get stuck in the dropper elevators here. But the good news is the items won't despawn. Now maybe on second thought a better solution might have been to replace this with a shulker box loader, which could take an arbitrary amount of overflow items, so the system would never back up. But again, this is a system for a starter base, and I don't expect to sort so many items that I get into serious trouble with the overflow. Of course, even storages that try to sort every item in the game can be rather compact. So here's the storage that I did for my JCraft series in 1.19. I used a similar pre-processing module, even though it was less compact. I split out unstackables and shulker boxes, and then came a series of maybe 100 impulses V-sorters arranged in 3 rows. And on the other side, I had a multi-item sorter with about 20 columns. This one was 1 wide, using 2 rows of 2 wide multi-item sorters on the left, on the right. And I did have a couple of shulker box loaders, about 24, where I would put in the bulk items, like stone, cobble, and this worked really fine. But I wouldn't want to build this in a starter base. After designing it and creating a Litematica file for the storage, I would say it took me maybe 15 hours to build it and to initialize it, to set all the filters. And of course, this system is rather bulky and uses a lot of resources. And also, here you see the issue with the hiding of the redstone. You can only hide this in a mega base because you need a lot of room. I mean, it's quite compact on the inside, and this was one of the design goals, to have everything close together. But you need about 10 blocks in each direction, left, right, top and bottom, to fit all the redstone. But for a starter base, I don't want to sort every item. What I basically want is a system where I can throw in my shulker boxes or the stuff that I have in my inventory and have it pre-sorted. So like 95% of the items will end up here, and a few I will have to sort out manually. Of course, what we could also do is extend the system using a few classic impulse sorters. So these would be the traditional sorters that sort out 1 item. We have 2 rows of these. For the items that you need the most and handle the most, you could set up these sorters. Simply for space consideration, I moved the input and the preprocessor to the other side, so they are now behind here. And on this side, we just have the multi-item sorter. And the items are sent via this water stream over the impulse sorters first, and the rest is processed in the multi-item sorter. But it makes the whole thing a lot more bulky, and it still has limitations. Now, for example, if I would put cobblestone or stone in here, even though these are 2 double chests for each item type, these would fill up rapidly. And on the other hand, with way over 1,000 items in the game, I would need a lot more of those. And I would absolutely need shulker box loaders for the bulk items to handle overflow issues. So I decided to go for the more compact and a bit less comfortable version. But this one is also in the world download if you want to have a look at it. I wanted a storage that I could build in 1 afternoon, and this one here fits the build. And I must say, Rapscallion has done a fantastic job with the multi-item sorter version 5, because it's so much easier to build than the multi-item sorter version 4. So just for completeness, there are a few more limitations, even though I don't think they are a big issue for me. As I said, the multi-item sorter works at almost hopper speed, while the preprocessor works at hopper speed for all stackable items. So whenever we change the item type, we get a 2 to 3 second delay here. And I set up this buffer chest here, which will store the incoming items in the meantime. But it could happen if you have a lot of different items that this chest could back up. It wouldn't be dramatic. In this case, some stackable items would end up here in the output for the unstackable items, which is not a big issue for me. The second limitation, I don't check if the shulker box loader here is full. So if you send in more than 60 shulker boxes at a time, it could happen that these shulker boxes despawn. It could be prevented, but I don't think this is a use case that is really interesting for me in my starter storage. Now, we already talked about the limited overflow. And maybe the biggest limitation is that the capacity of the filter chest is limited. So you have 54 items in a filter chest. For example, if you want to make one column containing all the items made out of wood, you would need a lot more items for the filter chest. So I will just configure the filter chest for the items that I use the most, and I will just live with the fact that occasionally a few items will end up here in the unsorted items slice, and I will have to put in those manually. This storage is hooked up to a chunk loader. The design is by Dark, as pretty much every multi-item sorter has to be hooked up to a chunk loader because typically these things break if they are unloaded while running. Now what I do is basically take an output from the hopper leading into the multi-item sorter, so that's one. And if we have any items in there, I will use a couple of pulse extenders. This chunk loader will run for about 30 seconds, which is plenty of time for the item to travel through all of the slices of my multi-item sorter. And the pulse extender is refreshed every time when an item comes through. And I even managed to have a chunk loader portal here and quite close a portal to the nether here, which goes to the nether roof. You just have to place the portals right. So this is the one for the chunk loader. You see the minecart popping in here. And of course this portal leads back to my storage system. So the way I organize my items, that I group them in a way that makes sense to me. It might not make sense to you. There are some stuff that I will just keep separately. For example, the terracotta will be in one chest and I will sort this manually. Of course, all the unstackable items. And I typically use one chest for each type of farm. So for example, this comes from the raid farm, output from the ice farm. I will bring over a couple of shulker boxes to my storage. If I need large quantities, I will just go to the farm. And all of these farms have shulker box loaders. So I can just grab a few shulker boxes there. I did set up a few separate chests for the items that I need all the time, like rockets or food. But for now, I will just keep these stocked manually. And here on the wall, I have the stuff that I need. For example, a pickup with fortune, 2 hoes, silky and lucky, the book for the armor stands. Now it took me maybe a day to build this, including moving most of the stuff. So I'm quite happy that I have everything organized now. Of course, all the components that I use are linked in the description. And there's a world download. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you want to see more videos like this. And see you next time. Bye bye.